Good afternoon to all. Omar, thanks for the introduction. Sipo, yes, you can carry on recording. Guys, I think firstly, to get into the topic for today, we've been doing a lot of the theoretical part about the methodology, the philosophy for the past few weeks. So in discussion with Omar and some of the other coaches here, we said, let's show the coaches how the theory can come alive in the practice, because a theory on its own is nothing without the practice. We've been lucky enough over the past 20 odd years to have been involved in quite a few projects where we have put this theory into practice. And where actually this theory has evolved over the 20 odd years, if not longer, from the mid-70s when it was called mosaic football, when late Prof conceptualized it in Romania and Turkey and Germany, and then went on to USA. It took the form of Maximal Training when he came into Africa. His first stint was in Zambia in the 80s. He achieved huge success there, where he took the national team, he qualified them for the AFCON in Algeria. And so on. Maximal Training has evolved over the last 20 to 30 years. A bit of context with the Sundowns project. This was actually our second stint together at Sundowns, myself and Coach Ted. I joined him there in the 90s, in the 97-98 season. I was the head of the academy, head of the reserve team. He was the head coach of the first team. As you know, you guys know, that famous Sundowns team of our own Dan Dance was on that team, guys like Roger Futemba and them, and the kind of football they were playing. At that time, there were not much resources in the game, so we just had one reserve team, which was the academy team. I was the only coach there. That just started from basically a group of young players that Prof. Ted had brought over when the School of Excellence went under its transformation. He took those boys over with him to Pirates. He was there briefly with them. And when things didn't work out at Pirates, he left. The boys were at a school called Highlands North in Balfour, in Joburg. And then eventually we found a home at Sundowns, where the project started again. So 10 years later, we had an opportunity to start another project, and once again at Sundowns. So in that first group of the 97-98, we had some real outstanding talent. Some of the players are now coaches. Some are on this platform. One is Thabo Mabaso, who we call Donna. There's others who you guys would know. To me, one of the missed opportunities, we had a talent that could have been South Africa's first real, true world-class player. And it was a privilege to work with a player like that. Was Mbulele Oljon Mabizela. A lot of you would know about him. Unfortunately, he got lost along the way, but he was an outstanding talent. Some of the older coaches here, or more experienced coaches, would know some of the players who came there. A lot of those players, sorry, were actually from the Midlands area of KZN, the Maritzburg, the greater Maritzburg area. It's an area that is very, very rich in talent, and a lot of those players showcase their talents coming from that area. So 10 years later, we had an opportunity again. We were approached by the new owner of Sundowns, who's still the president now, Mr. Motsepe. He approached Ted to say he wants to start up a real high performance program. He had been visiting certain models in Europe. Obviously, everyone knows he's very close to the Barcelona model. He had visited the Barcelona, Juventus, Bayern Munich, some of the top European clubs. And he wanted to transform Sundowns, especially to come with the high performance project. At that time, I think it was 2008, our Greg, who's on this platform, was heading a youth development program that was at Sundowns, but it was more of a very commercial or social venture. It wasn't really run on a high performance objectives. So Ted and I just left Amazulu the previous year because we were hoping to set up similar kind of project in Durban. It's always a challenge when you have the right ideas in mind, the right project in mind, but then you need a host club with the resources, with the facilities to make it come alive. So when the Sundowns opportunity came around, Ted at first went and presented. He met the Sundowns president, who was very excited with the project plan and what Ted had to present. Then Ted and I sat. I was obviously not working or not attached. So a week later, I joined him. But prior to that, this process had taken a few months to get to the president, to get him to know what we wanted to do. So we had done a lot of background work. We had put the plans in place. We had drawn up the programs. Because when you do something like this, first thing is, what are your objectives, your short-term, medium-term, long-term objectives? So when we find a club that's in it for the long term, who want to develop top quality players for the long term, then it's a good partnership. But over and above that, I think the most important thing for me is to have the right technical surround staff, the right technical staff with the correct balance of experience and expertise. And as we know in this country, not only in this country, South Africa, the continent, and other developing countries, when you come with a real advanced project, it's very difficult to find the correct kind of expertise to bring on board. Firstly, everyone has got to have a unitary mindset. We all got to share similar line of thinking. We all got to have be aligned to one sort of philosophy, whether it's a philosophy on the field or off the field. So we got to share a common mentality. That's the most important thing. Then you look at the mindset of the people who you want to bring on board. Can we work together? There's different personalities that come with their own egos, with their own pride, with humility, all of that. So it's very complex. For two people to put it together, it's impossible. You have these well-established academies that we use as the La Masia, the Ajax model, the Bayern Munich. They are there for decades. And people grow old. I'm talking about the technical staff. They grow old in those projects. So to put something new together, it's very, very challenging. But nonetheless, because I think the few of us who work together, especially under Ted, we love challenges. We take things on that might seem impossible to the normal person or ordinary person. We are not in it for personal gain or monetary gain. We love to do the work, and the rewards, our whatever comes out of it, development-wise, performance-wise, those are the rewards that satisfy us, you know. So it was an exciting journey. Once we started the ball rolling, Ted started, I think, in late May, early June of 2008. A week later, I joined him. We had a series of meetings with the president. Some of you guys who are on this platform have worked at Sundowns. Some are working at Sundowns currently. You will know how supportive he is, but he's also very hands-on, and he likes to know what is happening. So we had a series of meetings with him. We laid out our plans. So because of the mandate and the seriousness of the project, we came with a very smart idea of having a twin-pronged program that will have an accelerated program whereby we will scout and recruit a group of 18 to 19 years old that we can put on an accelerated program. And parallel to that, we would then go for a younger age group, 15 to 16, that we can have more time to work with. So it was two projects running parallel to each other. Because we wanted to save the club resources, we didn't want to come with a whole group of players from under 13 or under 15, 3 or 4 age groups. We decided to start with one age group or one group of players in the 18 to 19-year-old range, and then every year increase to another age group. Eventually, the long-term plan was over 7 to 8 years, if not longer, is to have all age groups from under 6 or under 7 right until the elite youth groups of 18, 19 years old. Part of our plans included satellite academies that we had set up even in the first year. We had one in the East Rand, we had one in Tshwane area, in Mamelodi. And then the plans were to slowly roll out the satellite projects countrywide with the coaches who would be trained under the methodology, so that we scout and recruit and develop players first in the regions where the satellites are, and then the best or the most promising of those talent come to the high performance project based at the Sundowns head office. So before we started putting all this together, there are different objectives when you design a high performance project. You got to look at the 3 phases. It's your immediate to short term time frame that will take you up to, from now to about 6 to 8 months. Then you look at your midterm, which is about 18 to 24 months. And then obviously your long term, which can go up to 7 to 9 years, depending on what age do you start with. All those will definitely influence how you develop players. The longer you have players in the project, and obviously the methodology is so important, the longer you have them, on average we say 7 to 9 years, which internationally could go from 7 to 12 years, depending on what age group you develop. That's the full span where you can develop players to world-class international standards. So we had to come with an accelerator program. The thinking behind this, if you may, later on someone might want to ask, what was the reason for the accelerator program? Obviously, we put together a very enterprising and ambitious proposal to the president of the club. And we put our reputation, our head on the line to say that within the immediate short to medium term, that is within 2 years, we would produce at least 4 to 5 players, either for the first team or would go on to play professional football, senior football. So hence we had to go on an accelerated program. So by doing this, it also changed the criteria of how we discovered talent. So we had to readjust the way we are going to recruit players, scout for players, but the criteria based on their natural attributes doesn't change. We go for players obviously with superior abilities for ball skills, agility, anticipation, all the criteria that we mentioned in the previous sessions. So those were there. But what we had to do over and above that, we had to be a bit smart to say, okay, how do we narrow, because time was against us, and we had to put together a group of players who we know under the training methodology and the regime that we had would definitely accelerate and even maximize the potential that they have in a shorter space of time. So the scouting had to be spot on. We had to use our network all around the country. We had to even poach players who we thought could add value. But luckily, we also took a lot of players who were rejected from other clubs, from other academies, who possibly coaches there or their philosophies there did not suit their natural talent. Maybe the players were so-called a bit too skillful, too creative. So there were these kind of players who were available. But I think before we started putting that together, Ted and I, we sat down, we said, okay, there's 2 of us. What do we do next? Who are the people do we bring on board? So obviously we have a very, very close network of people who are in the methodology, in the philosophy that we profess and we follow. So we first, Ted asked me, I remember we went to a restaurant one day and having a bit of wine. So he says, Sudesh, it's 2 of us here. What do you want to be in this project? Do you want to be the head coach? Do you want to be? So I looked at it and I said, look, let's not be selfish. We always wanted a platform like this where we can also empower other coaches, because the better brains that we have, the more like-minded people, committed, serious, loyal people we have, the more successful the project can be. So then we identified Zippo, obviously, as one of those, Dan Malesela. We also had to look at guys who could be available, although they were in jobs, guys who were not available, who are free. So we had a few names that we deliberated around, and then we settled. Obviously, it became apparent that Dan was going to be free. He had, I think, just left a few months before that, the School of Excellence. So he was there, being a former player under Ted. He was there in the first phase when we were there in the 90s at Sundowns. And now he had really grown to be a successful youth development coach. He had earned his stripes working at the School of Excellence, the Transnet School of Excellence. So we felt that he could be an ideal guy to bring on board. Plus, he also brings that valuable. I know there's always this debate about ex-players as a coach and coaches who never play the game, but we always try to achieve that balance. And Dan is one of those who I think has done remarkably well to bridge that line from making the transition from a quality ex-professional into an even more quality successful coach. So Dan was there. We spoke to him. He agreed. He was excited about the project. And 2 or 3 months down the line, he joined us. Then obviously next was Zippo. Zippo was at the tertiary institution in Durban, DUT. He still had to give notice and get out of that. So that took a few months. We had with us goalkeeper coach Gavin Selango. Some of you will know him, a former player, Chiefs, goalkeeper, Chiefs. And he was a goalkeeper coach at the existing youth setup under Greg there at the Sundowns. So we roped him in. And then we had worked with an exciting young coach at Amazulu. He's late now, and may his soul rest in peace, Sandile Ngwango. He really touched a spot in my heart. We worked with him briefly at Amazulu. He was a youth coach, but he had such passion for the game, and he was such a good talent. So we brought him along to the project. So eventually we had to start recruiting players. I had decided to take a role that is now known in modern football as the so-called sport director, whereby I would do all the work behind the scenes. I would be responsible for scouting, recruiting players, sorting out logistics behind the scene, working with the club administration, liaising with the president, with the board. So everything that needed to be done behind the scenes, I took the responsibility. Obviously, Ted, as the head, would prove to be the guiding, the leadership figure. But we also wanted to create a platform whereby the technical staff, the coaches that I mentioned, the 4 of them that started later, Zippo, Dan, Gavin, and Sandile, would go on with the work on the field. So they don't need to have any hassles about what happens off the field. They should know that on a certain day we're training at this time. They come an hour before to the office. We sort out what they're going to do. They get onto the field. They do their work. After the training session, come back to the office. We do a review. We monitor what's been happening. We evaluate the players. This was a daily thing. And then later in the afternoon for 5 o'clock, then the coaches and technical staff go home. But not before planning for the next day. So this was what we had a very tight team, but I think we all got on well, and we were all single-minded in what we wanted to do. So my job was basically behind the scenes to scout and recruit. Before even the coaches came on board, I'd already, using our network around the country, put the word out of what we're looking for. I traveled all over the country. I watched local league games, amateur games, youth games, informal games, all of those things. And eventually identified, I think the first group of players was the first year was 20 or 21 players. And I think I brought about 70% of those players. Dan had known some players that were available from his days of School of Excellence. He brought them in. Zippo knew one or two players from KZN who we felt could enhance the program. We brought them in. So I think in the first year, there was a lot of work that went in. What we did under TED, we divided the first year into, I think it was 3 or 4 blocks. The first block started the January 2009 to about April, May. There was a very, very intense training regime. The content itself, I mean, that will take us a few days of workshop to go through the content. That's how exhaustive the content is. And when you talk to the coaches, Dan and Zippo, they will tell you what the regime was every day. Even the players will tell you. So it was very futuristic, but I wouldn't say it was hard work. I think we like to use the term smart work, but we always worked at a medium to high intensity all the time. So the first block, the first 4 months proved so successful. We only put this team together. The players assembled in January. We had to find accommodation. Some of them were at school, some were not at school. So for the preceding 3 or 4 months, the latter end of 2008, that's where we did all the paperwork, all the preparation. January, the boys came together, we got them together, and work began. And the success of it was astounding, because within 3 or 4 months, this group of players won the Bayhill Cup. And everyone knows the Bayhill Cup is the premier youth tournament in South Africa and possibly on the African continent. So a feat like that, I don't think has ever been matched, you know, where you put a team together for 3 or 4 months and they go on to win such a prestigious tournament. So part of our plan every year was to also play tournaments, one locally, one on the African continent, and one internationally. So I was tasked with that responsibility. And through the international network, we managed to get invited to a prestigious tournament in Spain, which was unofficially called the World Under-18 Club Cup. It was hosted by the city of Madrid. It's called the Mundialito Under-18. So all the top clubs in the world would send the under-18 teams to participate there. Sundowns were the first team from the African continent to participate. So riding on the success of the Bayhill, later that year we went to Spain to participate in that tournament, and I think we really did well. It was a huge eye-opener. It was overwhelming. Although we lost some games, we drew and we won and we lost, but it showed that we are not far off from international standards at youth level. With the proper training, with the right methodology, with synergy between everyone, and everyone being single-minded and focused, we can definitely produce international level players at youth level. So the first year was very interesting. And I have to add, added to that, we just didn't want to make it a South African experiment or project. So what we did, we also recruited 3 other non-South African players. One youngster from West Africa, from a country called Benin. His name is Boris Flakanji. I think he played in France. He's now back home. The second was a Southern African player from Malawi, Robin Galande. He went on to play for Atletico Madrid. And then the third player was from East Africa, from Uganda. His name is Alex Kakuba. He's playing in Portugal now. So from the first group I think the success level, from about the 21 players, we only rejected about 2 players who did not go on to the second season. One was caught out because of his age was not right, so we had to release him, unfortunately. The second player was just not good enough for the project. So when you look at the ratio, the dropout or the failure rate, it was exceptionally low. So that showed you the quality of the project, the coaching, the scouting, the recruitment, the whole program, because you compare it to other such programs, the drop-up rate or the failure rate is very, very high. So it takes a lot of work behind the scenes, a lot of planning, a lot of effort. But I think, as I mentioned earlier on, and I will always mention that it's the quality of the expertise that you have on hand. The training methodology is obviously critical because that's what makes everything come alive. You can have a lot of theory, but if you don't put it into practice, it's futile. So the project, I must say, in the first year ran exceptionally well. And then we were looking for, because of shortage of space at Floorkop, we were tasked to look for premises or hosts where we could move. We explored the Tax University, we explored various options. But then we got an interesting offer from Northwest University based in Potchefstroom. It was called, they had a club called Puk Tawana. They made an offer to go into partnership with us. They would provide facilities, lodging, accommodation, scientific, academic support, and even schooling for the players. So the second phase of it moved over to Potchefstroom, and that's where during the is the time up, Omar?
No, you can just round off now, almost.
Yeah, before it cuts off.
Yeah.
So I think later on in the second session, I would just give Zippo a brief chance to come in a bit, and was also one of the coaches who headed the project. A lot of us know some of the players who come out of this program. They were just there for 2 or 3 years, but with the right kind of training, they can go to the highest levels. We have players like Keegan Dolly playing now in France. We have Sianda Tulu. We have Butlem Konazi at Bidvest. We have Kwanda Ngonyama. So in the first, so we had promised the president within 2 years we'd deliver. We actually exceeded that. Within 18 months, there were 26 players who went on to play professional international football out of this project. So in 26 months, with an accelerated program, with parallel projects, because a few months after that, we started bringing in the younger crew. That's where the Keegan Dollies came in, Samuel Julius. There was a brilliant young talent who's late now, Dida from the VAR. They were the younger crew that we recruited in and slowly integrated them with the older guys. And as a result, within 18 months, there were 26 players who went on to play professional and even internationally. Within the first season, we had managed to put, I think it was 5 or 7 players into the Sundowns first team. We were lucky we had a coach at that time like Stoichkov, who came from Barcelona. He loved the work that we were doing. He loved the players that we produced. And he's the one who had selected some of the players to come into the first team. One of those, he even organized trials for him at Barcelona. That's how excited he was about a player like Sianda Tulu. Sianda went to Barcelona, he went to Arsenal, and all was done by coach Risto Stoichkov, you know. So it just shows that even if you can take players for 2 years, minimum of 2 years or minimum of 18 months, with the right methodology, with the right expertise, with the commitment of coaches, you can produce players that can at least go on to professional level. So can you imagine if a project like this can run its full span, anywhere between 5, 7, 9 years? We could definitely produce world-class players. And this is something that we always wanted under TED. Even like now, we are searching for the right platform, because with the evolution of the methodology, with the new findings, with new research, we can definitely put on a better project than what happened at Sundowns. Because that's what evolution is about. Every project that comes, every generation that comes has got to be better than the last one. So I feel, and I'm very passionate about this, some of you who know me very closely, if we find the right host, if we find the right kind of, it doesn't have to be a professional club, because we know what happens at professional clubs. The chairman could leave, or the CEO could leave, or the head coach could leave. Somebody comes in with the new ideas and then they scrap everything, you know. So I definitely feel, whether it's in South Africa or on the African continent, we can definitely put one of the world's most advanced youth development programs that I can put my neck on. I can even work for free on a project like that, because I know what I'm talking about. I've had the opportunity to work twice on such projects. I've done similar thing on my own in Asia, in Vietnam, combining duties as a first team coach and head of academy. So I know that it works. We've had people on the group questioning whether it's all about theory. But when Omar and I discussed this, we said, no, let's show the coaches what has come out of it. So people know that it's not just talk. So a lot of you would know about the players that we spoke about. Yes, some of those players were at maybe Academy of Chiefs or Academy of Vets or School of Excellence. So they had at least 2 or 3 years of a bit of decent development. But the accelerated part came in. And that's where in the second year, even we expanded, we brought in other coaches like Floyd Mohale, who's here. Later on came guys like Simon Bata, Walter Steenbok, Mandla Mazibuku, Themba Ngwenya. So it's also not just about developing football, maximal training methodology. It's about developing coaches. It's about developing network. It's about developing a new breed, a new way of doing things. It comes with a lot of sacrifice, as I mentioned earlier. Some of us have to put our personal ambitions on hold. I had the opportunity under Ted to choose what I wanted to do, to be the head coach, to be anything. But sometimes you got to be selfless and look at the bigger picture. You got to look at, okay, who's more suitable? Who needs this? Who can add more value? And then you create your own positions. And then this is something that I've learned from the late Ted over the past 20 years. You know, he was a selfless man who, although achieved so much on such huge high levels, but he was still humble. He still walked with the ordinary person. He had time for the ordinary coach. So I think that is something when we talk about sacrifices being made. Are we prepared in this day and age to put our personal ambitions on hold for the greater cause? Are we prepared to sacrifice to develop South African or Asian football, wherever we're based? Are we prepared to sacrifice our own ambitions to do that? And that's where it starts. It starts from selflessness. And hence, there's so few of us. You'll see a lot more would leave because a lot of coaches are selfish. You know, we just think about ourselves. We just think of what we can gain out of the game. We want instant success. We want to build ourselves. We want our name. We want to be on TV. But are we doing justice to the country? You know. So the project, I just wanted to give a brief overview of the project, the thinking behind the project, because there's a lot. It will take days and days if we have to go into the details. But the training, the advanced training methods that we used, I remember we had a guest from Portugal. He was the son of a coach I worked with in Vietnam, a Portuguese coach. The son worked for the biggest player agent in the world, Jorge Mendes, who's the agent of guys like Ronaldo and Mourinho. So I befriended these people from my time in Vietnam, and they came over to see what we are doing at this project. And he came with the chief scout of Jorge Mendes' organization. And they were amazed to see the training that we were doing at that time. We were at Potchefstroom at Northwest University. I remember them asking me, there was one exercise, I think it was Zippo or Dan were doing, where the players were using one leg to do something. So I explained to them what was the thinking of doing that exercise with one leg. And they were shocked. They said that it's the first time they've seen an exercise like that. And I think Coach Ted took a session, he did something on developing ankle strength, you know, but in relation to the game. And they were also shocked. They were asking questions. After that, we had dinner together. And the questions that came, I mean, these guys who are exposed to, I mean, Benfica and Porto in Portugal have, not just in that country, but they have some of the best youth development programs globally. So some of the training that we're doing was so futuristic that even we had to explain it to people who come from much more advanced cultures than football cultures than what we come from, you know. So there were a lot of things that were very revolutionary that still are. And when I look at some of the big teams in the world, the Bayerns, the Man City, the Barcelona, doing some of the training that we had been doing 10, 15, even 20 years ago, it just brings some warmth to my heart to say that when we were doing this, people thought we were crazy, thinking that these guys thinking they're in a circus playing with the ball, and it was chaos. From outside, it looks like chaos, but we who were inside knew that it was, yes, it might look chaotic, but it's what one would call organized chaos, but with stringent objectives behind it, you know. So there was a lot that we could go on for days and nights talking about this. You know, the training methodology obviously is key, is crucial for anything. We've looked at various academy projects around the continent, from the famed JMV model at Essex Mimosa that produced the Drogbas, that era. After that, nothing came out of it. There was a Firewood project in Ghana. Nothing came out of that after. We all know the Ajax Cape Town model. 2 or 3 players came out of that. But were those players developed at Ajax Cape Town, or were they at the School of Excellence? So we studied various models all over the world. And the sad thing is that we